A very good afternoon to you all. My name is Comfort Onyaga. I'm sorry my slide is not as sleek as theirs. But yes, so thanks to the organizers of the conference and to the IFAMA, New Haven, and the Young Board for having me here. So I would be facilitating the section using the system thinking lens. So first of all, I'm a member of the Young Board and a postgraduate student of food security at Murdoch University. So my work revolves around driving behavioral change, innovating, policy advocacy, and I've worked across continents in Africa and in Australia, where I'm currently studying. So using the systems thinking lens to look at the issues of all the challenges around training young leaders in the agricultural sector, like I said on my slide, the agricultural sector is facing a leadership pipeline crisis, and it's exacerbated by regional disparity, generational gap, mismatch between education and industry needs, and oversimplified narrative of innovation that ignores complex realities. So these complex realities are realities that are driven by climate change, population pressure, rural-urban migration. You all know that climate change is a new reality that everybody, without doubt, even the blind can see that climate change is real. And as a result of climate change, a lot of rural urban migration is happening. There's a mismatch between the educational system in the rural communities and that in urban community, and at the same time, the skills. So the skills requirements for people in rural community and those in urban community varies because the food system within these two communities varies. They are not the same. Also, there's rapid adoption of technology, which is both an opportunity and a challenge because it has actually resulted in producing a generation of people who are tech-driven and at the same time not deeply rooted with the soft skill required to drive an organization. Every young person wants to become a startup founder. Then farmers are aging. In rural communities, we have a lot of women working, the older people working, but is agriculture at that level attractive enough? If I'd say that in sub-Saharan Africa, where I come from, 70% of people live in rural community, but then they don't see agri-food as a viable path. I come from a continent where smallholder farmers are not treated as or seen as agripreneurs. They just mostly consider beneficiaries of most of the interventions that are driven by community-based organizations within these communities, but then they contribute hugely to the global food system. And young people are now migrating to urban communities, and this impacts the sector hugely. So different regions of the world have different realities. So this problem is a systemic problem. Like I said earlier, again, if you look at the tip of the iceberg, all we see is that there are challenges, but underneath the iceberg are deep-rooted issues and across different regions. So even when migration happens, let's say from Africa to Asia Pacific or Europe or Latin America, and the truth is people do not have the same skills that might fit into these regional realities, and then it becomes a serious challenge in addition to the already existing challenges. Again, we have cross-generational disconnects. The Gen Zs and the millennials, as we all know, are driven by different things. We live in a world today where my generation, the millennials, and the Gen Z, as well as the baby boomers and the Gen Alpha, like we saw, they're driven by different motives. So for instance, from my lived experience, I've been a two-time founder. We prefer the autonomy of owning a startup. So there's a startup culture. If you go on LinkedIn, everybody is a startup founder. Everybody is a CEO. But guess what? They lack the organizational skills to drive this startup. These are deeply rooted issues. And at the same time, they lack the grit. They do not really understand that even though the world is evolving, it's okay to adopt technology, innovate, and disrupt. Everybody's building a disruptive solution. But they do not understand the fact that agricultural sector, have some technical challenges, are driven by, have some volatilities like climate change, soil health, and all of that, that may not match the realities or may not be compatible with the innovation that they are launching in the ecosystem. So in terms of expectation, the industry expects, in terms of expectation within the industry, there's an expectation for consistency, regulatory fluency, and system-level thinking. So in terms of regulatory, I would like to emphasize on that briefly because there is the global regulatory framework, and then regionally and locally, there are different regulatory frameworks. If we need young people who I would say, because one of the speakers spoke, he said, we are the future of tomorrow. But I would say we are the future of now. We are already proving this in different capacity. And during the case studies, I remember making a recommendation, or one of the feedback I gave to the students was around the regulations and, legal requirements really. So when you're innovating, the regulatory policies within the global ecosystem and the rural or regional space ecosystem, they are not the same. These are things that can also impact or impede innovation and should be taken care of. So you cannot, drag and drop tech mindset and from the fintech or e-commerce into agribusiness without expecting biophysical, seasonal, and social systems that govern food. The policies that govern or the realities that govern the agricultural sector is not the same as those that govern the fintech and the e-commerce space. So a lot of speakers have touched on this already, talking about the education, the realities within the educational system and the industry gap. In sub-Saharan Africa, where I come from, sadly, there's a huge gap between the extent to which the industry has evolved and the curriculum. So many universities do not have up-to-date curriculum that reflects the current realities, the evolutions within even the tech ecosystem. So how do you expect these graduates to fit into those roles? And there's also little focus on soft skills, negotiation, storytelling, which plays a huge role, leveraging social media, like we saw the little kid, the Gen Alpha, already leading that space. Like I said in my opening, it's a systemic issue. So we need a system thinking lens to look at it holistically so that we are not just treating the symptoms on the tip of the iceberg, because there are issues underneath the iceberg that have triggered the problem that we're looking at. So there's need for resilience under climate volatility and regulatory. So what needs to be done? There's a need to redesign the curriculum, hands-on integration of learning and entrepreneurship program like what's happening at the Heaven School. And then recruiters must stop applying corporate tech filters into agribusiness talent. The agricultural ecosystem is different from the fintech, the e-commerce, and several other corporates. So the recruitment processes cannot be the same. Expectations cannot be the same. It's easy to pick someone from Africa or Latin America to work remotely for different roles. But within the agricultural system, the realities are not the same. So if the recruitment processes also needs to take the nuances within the ecosystem into consideration to ensure that they are also able to meet the requirement or the skill need for the ecosystem. And IFAMA has played a huge role in addressing this problem. In order to bridge this gap, the student case competition, like the previous speaker mentioned, and as we all know, is contributing hugely. It's a pipeline through which most of the companies are actually recruiting. And the Venture Building Challenge is one of the IFAMA initiative that is held annually. I think this year will be the 3rd edition for it, where students come from different organizations to build and develop a marketable solution. And lastly, IFAMA fosters academic and industry, which we already know. We have academia in the rooms. We also have industry leaders and students. So for takeaway, I would say we don't necessarily lack tech talent. We lack alignment. If we look critically, you see that the talents are there. All we need to do is to ensure that there's an alignment. And then training new leaders requires rethinking how we teach, recruit, and value agribusiness knowledge. And lastly, IFAMA provides a global platform, but the system needs to collaborate to drive transformation. It's happening here. It happened in Spain last year. With this collaboration, I hope that we'll have a lot of replication across the continent to see the change that we want. Obrigado.